Make sure, because I think you raised some good questions. When an agenda, or when a board meeting is held and a public notice goes out, does that agenda of that notice include the topics the board is going to make decisions on?
Well, there's two answers to that. One is what is required and one is what is your practice. For regular board meetings, there's not a requirement that you provide that much detail ahead of time because you've published, it's known that you meet at those times. But you do. As a practice, the board does publish its agendas. For the special meeting, there was, in the published notice that was sent to media and published, the topic of JF Web was included specifically because it was a special meeting. So you have to list the topics.
We tailor those for every one of our special meetings for that purpose.
And then my recollection is that the specific agenda was published, although I don't always check until the day of, so I don't know.
Those are typically published.
So the agenda
oral
saying that we
decision.
were going to make a decision that night was published.
Yes.
No.
Well,
I don't know.
Discussion, I don't know.
the notice
The
of the meeting
discussion-
said that it would, that was the topic for the meeting.
Right. Not that you would necessarily make a decision or not make a decision, but that was the topic for the evening.
And I guess that was sort of what perplexed the individuals that spoke to me. It was a work session, so they were surprised that a decision of that magnitude was made, coupled with the fact that all of the key stakeholders weren't present, but yet we still made the decision. And I didn't have an answer. I said I would come and raise it, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, the last thing I want to say, and then we'll move on, I mean, we made a decision.
Right.
The last thing I want to say is that we at one time said as a board that we were not going to make an individual decision on a specific school, that we were going to make them all at one time. And then out of the blue, the idea was to move forward in making a decision. So that may be part of what you're hearing, that people thought we were not going to deal with it until we dealt with 3 or 4 other schools. And then out of the blue, this happened. And I think it caught a lot of people by surprise, including me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
I
sir.
have a couple things I'd like to bring. Like Mr. Lynn, I was able to talk with several citizens of Grant County to attend a couple of meetings with some citizens as well. And I'd like to really just highlight on maybe three things. But before I do that, I would also like to say thumbs up to UTGHM, to Ms. Williamson as well, the magazine. I'm particularly proud of it because my niece, Laura, was in the group that came through tonight, so I have to give kudos out to her and all that's involved with that. After saying that, I wanted to add it to an agenda item, but at the same time, I wanted to make it as a request of something that I learned after talking to several citizens who had asked me a question concerning a vote that we did last meeting, concerning decisions on the merger of JF Webb High School and Webb Health, Life, and Science School as well. And it was brought to my attention by several people that they didn't understand how the first vote came out at 3-3, because it was 3 against 3. And I was able to explain that with ease. I said because there was only 6 members here. 3 voted for it and 3 voted against, allegedly. But then I was instructed by several people that was really a little upset with me because they asked me, that they were told by someone that I voted not to merge the schools. And I want to actually request that those minutes be pulled, because if I'm not mistaken, I do know myself pretty good. I voted to merge those schools. And several people was told that I did not vote to merge the schools. And that's why it did not pass at first. And I requested those minutes be pulled, revisit those minutes just for clarity of who actually voted yes and who voted nay on that first vote that did not pass. And because it's hard to explain if I didn't vote, how did the score or the outcome was 3-3. And that kind of baffled me and it also bothered me as a board member, so I definitely want clarity on that. I won't involve Ms. Burge, who said that was said that unfortunately it may have came from the board itself. That's why it bothers me a little bit. Because we have how can I put it, a real board meeting minutes because they're recorded. And I would like to have those minutes pulled because I want clarification on that. Why someone would say I did not vote when I did vote yea when that first motion was made by Mr. Udy. Secondly, I'd like for the other 2 minutes to be pulled for the last 2 votes as well, to show who actually voted for the merger and how we voted for the merger of the school and how we came to the summation of the year 2020-21. If we can have that, I would truly appreciate it. I personally want it for myself. It will be up to the other board members if they choose to have that same information. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the total agenda, because I've talked to several people. And before I get into that, a thing I also wanted to request was that I wanted it for this meeting actually, but I'll accept it when we get it. I would love for the board to have a report from the liaisons committee, from the last one and the one that is scheduled to occur between the Board of Education and the county commissioners. I would really like to have a report coming from the liaisons committee of what's the outcome of that committee meeting. Again, I say that report is for myself. If any other member would love to have it, fine. But I suggest that we do it openly amongst the board members, that we'll all be on accord with what's being brought from the commissioners to the board and what's being given from the board to the commissioners. So I request those 2 things. The third thing I'd like to talk about is that each hearing we've had, each work session that we've had, I like the way that it's transparent and open. I think that's how all meetings should be conducted. And I applaud the way we're doing that right now. But I would like to ask something. I really want to put the superintendent on the spot on this one. We have said from each time that we have a work session and we invite the public to come and to attend it, we emphasize that we want our superintendent and her staff to be on the sidelines because this is work that the board has to do on these decisions that we have to make concerning this allegedly $900,000. But I also hope that the superintendent wouldn't feel offended because we said we didn't want her to be a part of that. But the superintendent is our educational director for the county of Graham County. And I would like to just maybe get her opinion on some of these issues because she is who we're going to look to head the educating of our students and of our kids in the years to come. Since she and her staff are experts on that, I really just don't want them on the sideline in completion. I would like to hear at least their opinion on some of these things, how they think it will affect the educating of our students. And she can bring it at any time that she chooses to bring it. But I value that opinion because she's really the person that we all are going to hold accountable for if things don't go right, of the decisions that we make. Sometimes we have a tendency to want to share the load. And I would love to know her opinion before we would make any decision. Will we listen to her or not? I just think it's so important and respectful enough to hear the opinion of those who are in charge of educating our kids on their opinion on these important decisions that we're about to make for our children countywide. The next thing I would like to talk about is the idea of the rumor of closing total school. Dr. Julian, I'm glad you said what you said, but in the beginning, we was not gonna make any quick decisions. In fact, in the beginning, total was not even on the first two things that we chose to look at. We had looked at other several options of ways of allegedly finding ways to cut this money that we say we have to cut. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Mills, I did miss a meeting where y'all asked for that additional survey on closing total school that was not part of the original things that we had asked for. We was concentrating on first, on the merger of J.F. Webb High School and Health, Life, and Science. And then we had looked at the idea and trying to get information about the merger of Murpata Middle School and Northern Randall Middle School. We also had looked at the idea and the possibility, and I thought these were the forerunning things that we was looking at, which I believe if we had stuck to would not have caused some of the havoc that we have caused as a board in our decision. We also was looking at what would be in the ideal, and this is not just room, but I think everybody knows what we're ready to say, about even the building or seal is housed in. The ideal would be, if the ideal of something was merged, that those buildings would be looked at as being a first avenue of getting funds toward that shotgun that we say we have. Even the possibility that if Granville Central moved to one of the school locations themselves, such as Murpata, that it also would provide capital that would come within the guidelines of trying to find some money to fit that gap. And to me, those things were practical and sensible, to look at the tangible things which were of solid structure that Mike would bring in funds versus looking at the possibility of putting out the horrible rumor, as Mr. Land alluded to tonight. And I thank him for coming and sharing what he shared. I felt his heart so deeply in the idea that you would jump from tangible buildings that might bring income, and all of a sudden you would jump to want to close a community school. With that in mind, that bothers me immensely, because I think we should look at those things first and stop overpowering and overwhelming our superintendent and their staff and worrying our community to death about the stability and the safety and security of whether they will have a community school or not. I think if you're going to cut funds, why not cut funds that's going to affect buildings first? Because there's nowhere said that we have to have all of it within this first cut or look at trying to achieve those type of funds. Why don't we look at those first things that we all agreed on in the beginning, to go back and look at those things first? And I recommend the idea of that because I'm sure Mr. Lyman is not the first one that will come and speak toward us on the total school scenario, because we have upset a whole lot of families and a community by jumping from it not being a part of our first things that we're going to look at to all of a sudden being one of the main things as the main money bringer to bring these funds about that we allegedly are looking for. Now, personally, I call it a little barbaric that we would look at injuring students prior to injuring tangible buildings and things of that nature, trying to obtain funds. Dr. Holliday, or Reverend Holliday, said something that touched my heart, and I hope it touched the rest of y'all's hearts as well, that our children are why we are on this board. Our children are why we have a Board of Education. Our children are why we have the county commissioners. Our children are why we meet each month here, concerned about the well-being of our children. With that said, and I look at the importance of that, also, we didn't mention tonight that we was allegedly supposed to get back questions back to our staff, working on the deaf again, scaring the community again, because all that is out in the community as well. And we're supposed to bring back questions, that we will do a survey to the community, total community only, again, about the proposed closing of that school. Now, I had to ponder with that real hard, because I know I've been an advocate, spokesman for saying how I feel about that merger. But I did find it in my heart to be responsible to what I was asked. And I did send my question back to the staff and to the superintendent. And I hope that the rest of y'all, with compassion, have done the same thing. With that in mind, and with saying that, I took a step further as a concerned citizen for not only my community and for the total community, but for Granville County. I took a step and I talked to a couple of commissioners myself. And we had a conversation. I won't call the names tonight, but they even feel strongly about closing that school and the damage it has done to the community already by putting such information out, whether it went out intentionally or whether it went out unintentionally. But the damage, the psychological damage, it is already done to a community that only has one school within its community. And we all pride ourselves on having community schools. We all been told that you put the school where the students are, not put the students where the school are. Wake County is fighting that. So many other counties are fighting that same thing. But with that being said, I'll say something that I said on previous couple of meetings, and it used to be something that was dear to our heart, and I hope the board will not back away from that commitment. And why don't we still ask for those funds to be given to make up the need, that we will not have to go into our funds to cut it off? I got kind of like the idea that commissioners may be on board with that. So with that said, I'm just saying, Mr. Mills, you're a former commissioner, but I'm saying what they said, and we can only know unless we ask. And with that said, I would recommend that we would table any further actions on the closing, possibility closing of total school until we look at all those other avenues that I talked about tonight, such as those buildings, such as the other two mergers that we're doing with the other mergers that will not affect students being, a community being disrupted, as the Murpata and Northern Granville Arena. To me, the thing with compassion toward a community school should be looked at over the idea of just trying to get a quick way to get a dollar value solved. I would recommend, would even like to offer a motion that we would table that and look into those other two arenas before we would put anything else out toward looking at the closing of total school.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. We have a second. Mr. Udy, discussion?
I have a question before we vote. There is a public hearing scheduled for October. And my question is, if we vote to not go any further, then do we cancel the hearing or not?
If you vote not to go any further, I would have staff stop what they are doing at this point. This board identified 6 or 7 things you needed additionally for the stay. We would put a pause on that, and there would be no need to have a public hearing because you would not in fact have the additional information.
I was thinking in terms of the community reacting to what we're doing. And I don't have a problem with doing it. I just want to be clear as to what's going to happen if we do this with the community. I mean, that community is sort of up in arms and preparing themselves for this public hearing.
Yes, but I don't think it would break their heart if they realize we have compassion enough to stop and look at other avenues. I think they would hold on to everything that they have and hope they would never have to use it.
I just want to make that point.
Well, let me just sort of step out here and step into it. And Mr. Chair, I need to address another point that that Mrs. Smith made, but rather germane to what the motion is. I guess I wonder, why do we take anything off the table now? In other words, if we're serious about our school district, let's look at it holistically. Let's look at everything. If we're going to start cherry picking, and because the Tola community at Oak Hill doesn't want to, I can imagine Hawley will be here just as well, and I don't see why Mary Potter doesn't show up. So my point is, you know, I fully appreciate what Mrs. Smith is saying, but then I'm wondering about the stewardship of this board. Are we gonna do anything or not? And if we are we going to selectively choose what we're going to do? Or are we gonna look at everything?
Well, in the very beginning, Mr. Mills, we were selectively choosing. We had chose those other avenues to look at. And because we changed in the middle of the road, is how we created the confusion that we had. Not only have we upset one community, but you almost to a point where you're gonna have one community against another community. Because we seem to be so abruptly, rapidly speeding at a pace that we're looking toward closing or want to close. It's the only one that we have really pushed for is closing. Nowhere in our agenda have we said closing the rest. We only talked about changing and improving the southern schools and maybe transforming one from one type to the other type. So there is a clear difference in the message that we're putting out towards this school. And again, that's why I say, why don't we look at the things that don't affect the psyche of our students first and give our administrators time to do their jobs, to still look after our kids, but still do these things that seem more tangible than to keep putting this undue and unnecessary stress in a community. And there's only one community that's really going under that stress right now of closing.
Couple of points. Number one, we are following exactly what the state requires us to do. And if there are some things that are missing, as you have mentioned, that haven't been looked at, then that should be incorporated into the work moving forward before a final decision would ever be made. Just to not move forward with at least looking at all this clearly sends a message that we're not doing anything. And maybe when the end of the day, we won't. But we said we were going to collect information, we were going to follow the study, and that's exactly what we have been doing. And go back once again, if you would, please.
Because we made that decision at another meeting that changed the route in which we were going. I'm asking that we do the same thing.
Well,
make a change in the route that we're going.
We also said we were not going to make a decision on any of these projects until the very end. And what did we do last week? We did the School of Health and Life Science. So it's not just one school. There are other schools that are involved in some of this as well. I would agree with Mr. Mims. Any other comments?
Mr. Smith, could you repeat the motion, please? Would you mind?
That we would take any further survey or action toward the closing, the possibility of the closing of Tola School. And then we would concentrate on the things that concern raising capital of the building mergers that we talked about first. And the other two options are JF Webb High School and JF Webb High School Life and Science, long motion. And also the merger of the possibility of the two middle schools. And I can't leave this out because this is so important. Now, whether people are on to it or not, I'm gonna hold to the feet. That we would then look into asking our commissioners for needed funds for the, amount that we allegedly say we need to keep running this LEA.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussions? Would you repeat the motion once again?
Well, if I'm just trying to figure out the Robert's rules of this. And could the motion, there's a lot of until we've done this and until we've done this. Is your motion captured in a motion to, not proceed with the Toller hearing and further action at this time? If you include all the, until we've done this and that, then the implication is that we're automatically gonna take it back up when those things have happened. And I'm not sure if that's the case. Maybe you, until the board chooses to take it up again.
Thank you.
Is that
I
more
would accept-
accurate?
I would accept that clarity.
Does that make sense, board members? A motion to cease consideration until the board chooses to take it up again?
Cease consideration of what?
So to cease to cancel the public hearing and cease consideration of closing Joe Toller School, is my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a counter motion?
Sure, Pam.
I'd make a motion that this not be discussed again until the first Monday in December, when the full board is here, including a new member. Because if we vote on something tonight, it could be a 3-3 tie, and what have we done?
We just talked about it.
So we'll need to have action on the original motion unless it's withdrawn.
Okay. So, So what we'll need to do in response to that motion is to go back to the original person who made the original motion and ask him whether or not he is interested in withdrawing his motion.
No, Mr. Chairman, I would like to proceed with that motion.
Okay, very good. So you're on. All right, all those, if we would, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Which motion? The motion that Mr.
The motion to cease further consideration of the closing of Joe Toller School until the board chooses to take it up.
Okay. All right, all those opposed, raise your hand. 3-3 tie, the motion is not approved.
Had 3-3 the other night and you approved it.
No,
You
that
didn't
motion
approve
failed.
the motion to move.
Second motion went on the floor, and that's the one that got approved with the revisions.
Second. And well, let me dispose of this, because I need to ask permission from the chair to respond to Mrs. Smith once.
Okay, so the motion is not passed, therefore it's defeated, correct?
So given that, did you want to renew your motion or is it moved?
Yes, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I'd like to renew my motion.
Okay, is there a second? Repeat your motion.
I move that the board not make any decision that's been suggested here tonight about Joe Toller Oak Hill until the new board is seated the first Monday in December, and that the full board is here. And Mr. Richardson is not here tonight.
Okay, all right, that's the motion. Is there a second?
Can I have an unreadiness at this juncture?
Say what?
Can I have an unreadiness? And the reason for my unreadiness
I'm
is...
sorry, unreadiness, I'm not sure.
Well, I heard the motion,
Okay. Preston.
but I'm not clear that the motion is necessary. And this is the reason. If the previous motion to cease or to table it failed, those who voted for it were not prevailing. So they can't bring the motion up again tonight anyway. So the motion can't be brought up again until December. Why is there a need for Mr. Cox's motion to wait until December? That was my unreadiness.
Okay, thank you. Comment?
No comment.
Okay.
Judge,
So,
for lack of a motion.
yeah,
Or
there's not a
second.
second. Correct. All right. Yes, sir.
Now, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Smith, I might owe you an apology, but if it's so, if that's the case, it's because I didn't clearly understand. You mentioned that someone had indicated that you didn't vote on the first motion at the last meeting. I was asked that by some citizens at a meeting, the Granville County Local Organizing Committee. And I told them on the first motion, last meeting, during the work session, when Mr. Udy made the motion to merge health and life science and web, that Mr. Udy made the motion, I second the motion. When it came up, what I recall, and I could very well be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I'll definitely always own up to it. I thought there were 3 people who voted against doing it right away. Mr. Udy had made the motion to do it right away, and I had seconded, and I didn't recall hearing your,
I voted.
okay, if you voted, then,
That was the that's why I want the minutes called.
okay,
I don't
well,
want us to go on speculation, and you don't have to apologize to me,
That-
Mr. Yu. I just want the minutes called, that it would be correct, and that it would be written in a statement that would clarify to anyone else who might have speculatory information, that they would get the correct and clear information.
and I, no, I certainly
You
endorse
apologize to me.
and support that.
I never said that you said it, so we didn't have to go there.
Well, I mean, I'll certainly own up to whatever I say. And I was asked by members of the community, and that was what I recall. I remember you sitting there, I just didn't hear you. So once Ms. Pettaway or the minutes are produced, but the motion failed anyway, so it was a moot point. But the fact is,
Let me say this to you, because you did not hear me, that doesn't mean it did not happen. So I would never go out and speculate on something that's that important, that might affect the character of someone else. If I'm gonna say whether a person voted yes or no, I'm gonna make sure I knew if they voted yes or no.
That's fair.
And I'm saying you,
That's fair.
but to answer that question on that type of comment, that's why I like that we have true minutes, that we don't have to go by speculation. We can say, well, let me check, and I'll see how the vote came about. So no apology is needed from me.
good.
That vote was specifically done by raise of hands, so nobody spoke,
That's correct.
and that's the way it was presented, was by raise of hands.
Okay. Would you like to jump in for a minute?
Dr. Lena, I would like to say one more thing. I hope that we will consider and not let it lie, that we still look into the ideal of commissioners providing us funds as they assume that they may do.
Now, Dr. McLean, any comments on your part? Then we'll be able to move on, I believe.
You might get out
I
of 2
do
hours.
have.
You all will not hold me accountable tonight.
I do have one